In China, talking about the end of life is huge taboo, like inviting bad luck just by mentioning it. But when it actually happens, a whole ritual operating system instantly kicks in. Detailed rules, roles, timelines, clothing, behavior, everything. Unlike in the West, where grief is mostly a private emotional journey, here is public rebirth for family roles, inheritance, and social order. Hey guys, I'm Chuchu. So here's a big question. China never really had death education classes like the West, no Greek counseling traditions, no death psychology courses. So how did people learn to face loss for thousands of years? Today, let's talk about China's hidden death system and how it quietly trains people to deal with grief long before modern therapy existed. If you're into cultural psychology and deep dives like this, stick around. That's what this channel is about. And if I get anything wrong, call me out in the comments. I reason. Let's time travel. In ancient China, death wasn't avoided. It was placed right on the table. The Zhou Dynasty was the first to turn death into a manageable social system. Before Zhou, it was a horror movie, mass human sacrifices. Zhou turned that horror into an instruction manual. Clothes, mourning period, who leads, who inherits, everything was regulated. Take a little A's death. When he exits the stage for the first time, the clan system automatically starts. Zhou invented the 5 degrees of mourning. Little A, as the eldest son, gets a VVVIP uniform. The first grade named Shuai. It's not flowering silk, it's a rugged on-hand burlap. In ancient China, the more painful and raw the fabric, the deeper the respect. Wearing this burlap wasn't about being poor. It was a high-status display of raw grief. Wearing it like posting to social media. Little A is heir, the power is now mine. Death actually triggers one clean recognition. Resources, property, ritual rights automatically transfer to Little A's account. Younger brothers adjust attachment. Then comes the fourth gap year, 3 years of mourning. No promotions, no weddings, no luxury food. Even if the king needs you, you must say, sorry, I have to stay home. This was a mandatory career post. In eyes of say, if you can't be a loyal son to your father, you can't be a loyal servant to the king. In modern terms, an HR nightmare. This system crucially forced space for death, proving that family order always personal career. The father doesn't disappear, he becomes an ancestral account in the temple. We worship him not just to miss him, but because the system needs this account to keep the inheritance order clear. He became a human order page. But this system requires strong big boss, the Zhou king. When he lost power, people started a system selecting. If no one is checking, why suffer for 3 years? To save this system, Confucians arrived. Confucius didn't scrap the rules, he reinterpreted them. He knew society would collapse without order, so he did a pro-gamer move. He turned external force into internal morality. Little A's death exists again. In Zhou time, Little A more because his role. Now it's called filial piety. Little A faces a brutal moral exam. Confucianism stands on the moral high ground and asks, your father is dead and you are not observing the 3 years mourning period? Are you even human? This turned funeral into a moral talent show. In the West, grief is mostly private therapy. Here is public proof you are a good person, filial piety on display. If you don't cry hard enough, everyone in the village will judge you as unfilial and talk shit about you behind your back. This is why today you see professional mourners and bands at rural funerals. It's not always about sadness, it's a visual proof of virtue to show the village. I'm a man of high character. Death became a moral graduation exam for the whole family. But this became too heavy. During the warring state period, with constant war and massive death, you couldn't keep up. You need 100 Sun Wukong clothes to finish all the tasks. So people ask, why must death be so heavy? Enter the Daoist. Daoism changed the lens. in the middle of all that heavy Confucian moral pressure where every death feels like a huge ethical task, Daoism stepped in and said, "Hold on, maybe we're overcomplicating this. Life and death are just a natural transformation, like seasons." Little A that axed for the third time. Yeah, poor guy is back on duty again. Confucian would jump in asking about duty. Did you mourn enough? Did you prove your filial piety? But Daoism asks a total different question. Why treat this as something abnormal or tragic in the first place? The famous Daoist Zhou sang drum on a bowl when his wife died. It wasn't cold-heartedness, it was a radical form of acceptance, treating death as promotion from limited body back into infinite universe. She simply completed her transformation from form back to formless. However, Daoism failed to provide social support system. Telling a grieving person it's just nature doesn't help with the pain. In war and famine, this high philosophy doesn't save lives. People need more. They need Buddhism. Buddhism rose during one of Messi's era in Chinese history. Its Senhan to Weijing, endless war, dynasty collapsing left and right, plagued everywhere. Regular people have zero say in whether they live or die tomorrow. That's when Buddhism asked a question no one in China had really focused on before. Hey, why are we so terrified of death, and what do we even do with that fear? Instead of telling people to toughen, Buddhism just validates. Look, being scared, totally normal. It's not weakness, it's human. The fear boils down to three things: clinging to what you lose, loved ones, your life, those little moments, panic about the complete unknown ahead, and the gut punch on me vanishing forever. Buddhism doesn't judge any of it. It just gently says, the pain hurts so much because you're holding on way too tight, losing the grip a bit. Sounds simple, but what does that actually look like? Well, let's take our poor little A. Little A that exists for the fourth time. Poor guy, he's really earning his paycheck at this point. Buddhism basically hands little A three gentle mindset shifts to make the pain a little less brutal. First, impermanence teacher gives the everything ends anyway nudge. Death isn't some personal curse, it's just the grand finale that hits everyone eventually. No exception. Second, rebirth teacher does the it's not forever flap. This isn't eternal goodbye, it's more like death logging out of this version and transferring to a new one, switching outfits for the next chapter. What feels like permanent loss suddenly turns into a temporary long-distance thing. And the deepest one, liberation teacher quietly explains the real root. The real A comes from holding so tightly to that specific dad who used to pack your hair for your needs. Losing the grip on the physical form. Let it go, and you will set both yourself and him free. These three teachers basically turn that fuzzy death anxiety into something you can actually break down and deal with. Think Asian therapy homework, but way wiser. For the first time ever, grief stops being just a performance you have to put on or tap out. You can actually understand it and gently walk through it. So to make all these profound teacher ideas actually land in real life, ordinary folks in China went wild with creativity. They start leveling up the rituals big time. Oh, and one thing I almost forgot. Here's why Buddhism clicks so hard in China. Its reincarnation idea match up perfectly with our old school soul concept. Unlike the Western single soul thing, we saw a bit of spirit, especially the Hun, that later young part, would drift out or hang around of death and needed looking after. So Buddhism's rebirth just feels like a natural next level version of what we already believe. No surprise, blended right in. That's why it went native super quick. Bedside chanting, burning just paper, all those paper offerings, it just clinked. These rituals serve double duty, helping the Buddhist rebirth subject move on to the next life, while also comforting or supplying the deceased lingering soul in the way we'd always done. Scenario 5, yep, little A that checks out for the fifth and last time. Produced been working overtime this whole video. 5 for reincarnations by now according to Buddhism. Rip death. You are the real MPV here. Little A thinks since he's transferring, he needs travel funds. So we burn paper money, paper villas, and even paper iPhones today. Plus maybe a paper power bank. Because what if there are no charging spot over there? It's like sending a care package straight to another dimension. Wait, if he can figure out the iPhone there, do we burn a lucky volunteer to go teach him? Hahaha, just kidding. This paper offerings aren't literary magic, they are symbolic comfort, a way to ease the family's fear that disease might still lack something in the next world. Buddhism really helps through that anxiety, but its ultimate goal was liberation, break free from the whole cycle of birth and death. I don't know what it means. Still, it never quite developed the modern idea of emotional repair or professional grief counseling. These four forces came together to form what we can call the classic Chinese death system. For thousands of years, give people a solid place to put their grief, a way to keep going even when everything else feels chaotic. But today, this system is kind of failing. Not because it's completely gone, but because it lost its original power in modern life. It hasn't vanished though, it just lives in a quiet, sneakier way. Deep in our subconscious, it shows up muscle memory. Even if no one ever taught us the rules, we automatically know how to behave at a funeral, when to stay quiet, when not correct jokes, how to bow or burn incense. This is something we'd be conditioned to feel. It shows up as catchphrases we say without thinking, just go with the flow. That's a Daoist echo. Or you have hold it together, be strong for the family. Till Confucian responsibility kicks in. And it shows up as community support, especially in the countryside. When someone passes, neighbors just show up cooking, keeping watch through the night, handling the little things. No one has grief completed alone. It's only the warmest, most beautiful left over from the old system. But here's a big blind spot, the fatal flaw. This whole setup was obsessed with rules, roles, family stability, and keeping society from falling apart. What it almost never focused on was the actual person inside, how they're feeling, how raw the sadness is, how to actually heal from it. Now, as we deal with the concrete high-rises, the social glue that once held everything together is starting to disappear. In these apartment buildings, where family ties are more scattered, the whole system just doesn't really work anymore. So we're stuck in this strange in-between. The old system is fading, and the new forms of support haven't fully taken shape yet. And maybe we don't need to copy Western-style death education wholesale. If traditional culture once taught us how to keep society from falling apart, then maybe what we need today is to learn how to make sure no one has to carry grief alone in silence. That might be what the future of death education in China looks like. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. I really want to hear your perspective.